Hi, my name's Teresa, and I'm a licensed independent clinical social worker. And this is a demo. This is not intended to be therapy. This is not advice for anyone. This is just for your entertainment only to see a role play of inference-based cognitive behavior therapy. If you are looking to work with someone who provides ICBT, please go to the ICBT.online website. So this video starts off with ICBT Module 2. I do start off my sessions with a review and an agenda building. And so you'll see there that I do check in with the clients to see if there's anything pressing before I dive into each module with the client. If you're wanting to skip ahead or maybe even to watch this video faster, I share this on YouTube so that you can up the watching speed. You can make it 2 times faster if you want to get through this much quicker. But these videos are intended for those who really want to see the full session. And we're like demystifying what ICBT treatment looks like. This is a very basic session just to give you an idea of how we help clients understand that their OCD doubts don't come out of nowhere. According to ICBT, there's a reasoning process at play, and that's what we work on in this session with this client. This is the third time I've met with the client, but it's the second time I've met with them providing ICBT. So in the very first consultation, I showed them the ICBT iceberg so that they understand that we're targeting inferential confusion and what that consists of, which we've got the narrative, we've got logic, we've got the vulnerable self, and we've got the distrust of the senses and the self. Okay, so that is all part of what we're going to be targeting in treatment. And module 2 is targeting the logic, the reasoning process. Okay. And so throughout treatment, we're going to try to come at each piece of the inferential confusion to try to resolve it, but it is a stepped process. And so last week, I worked with David. We introduced the sequence, the obsessional doubt sequence, and that is the intervention. The client is learning that there's a sequence there. They're able to see that this isn't just, I'm just triggered. They're able to see that there's a whole process at play. There's a prompt, there's an obsessional doubt, there's a consequence, there's anxiety and discomfort, and then there's a compulsion. So David learned that last week. And when I started session with him today, we reviewed that and he was able to track his own obsessional doubt sequence. And he was able to see that for himself. And he was able to reflect and say, what would remain of my OCD if the doubt were false? And because he was able to demonstrate that he's tracking that, I felt comfortable to move forward with him into module 2. There are times that you might be working with a client and we may not get through the full module in the session, or you might bounce around a little bit. It really depends on your client's needs. And so always use your clinical judgment for what you're thinking the client needs in that session. Okay, we're not trying to force the client into ICBT treatment. We're trying to modify the treatment for what our clients need. And so there's flexibility there. So module 2 is what we focus on today. And I am going to put some text in each part of the treatment to help the clinician understand this is what we're covering here. And then I just use the ICBT modules for myself. I don't use other formats. I just pull that up in session. And then I will send clients like maybe some other graphics and things like that. Or maybe sometimes I will share different graphics later on in treatment. But the modules work pretty well, breaking it down for the client. Feel free to use whatever modules you've put together, what other creative graphics that are helpful to make the point. We're working with a very broad range of clients and their needs. So modify this therapy to help the client understand what the point is that you're trying to make here, which is that OCD doesn't come out of nowhere, that there's a reasoning process at play. How's it going?
Oh, well, how are you?
Good. Well, let's build our agenda today. This is our second session of ICBT, and let's go ahead and see what we would like to cover. I've got some ideas. Do you have anything that you're wanting to add to the agenda today?
Nothing that I can think of specifically. I just want to continue with the progression of the modules that we talked about.
Mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, let's add that. I'm thinking, would it be okay if we add review? We'll talk a little bit about what we discussed last week, and then we can go through, based on the review, we can maybe roll into ICBT module 2.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay. And then we'll leave some time at the end for feedback on the session and anything we can do differently to make it better.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Well, we've got an agenda, so let's dive into review. Last week, we talked about ICBT Module 1, which was building that sequence. And,
Yes, the sequence.
mhm. And you were going to see if you could track some of the symptoms throughout the week. And I was curious, were you able to track any of those symptoms?
Yes, I was. Yeah, it was very interesting. And I was able to pay attention to things that happened to me during the day and put them into that sequence of with the prompt and the doubt and everything. So that was very interesting.
Hmm. Would it be okay if did you bring those with you? Like, did you write them down?
Yes, yes, I did.
Okay. Would it be okay if we pull those out now and we go over them a little bit?
Sure, yeah.
Okay. I can even, do you have the packet there, or would it be helpful if I share my screen and pull that up?
Sure, yeah, if you want to share.
Okay. I'll go ahead and do that briefly. Just a moment here. All right. Can you see my screen here?
Yes.
Okay. So this is just to refresh our brains. We did the sequence last week. And
Yeah.
so we have the internal, external trigger, prompt, the doubt, consequences, anxiety, discomfort. Okay. All right. I'm actually going to stop sharing the screen here so that I can see you. And then I just wanted to give our brains a little visual reminder there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I have the
So,
printout with me too, so
okay,
I can look at
perfect.
that.
Okay. Yeah, let's go through it. So I would be really curious to hear what was it that, and maybe we'll just maybe share one or two
Okay.
today, and then we can actually use it for the work we're going to do in the second module.
Yes, this past weekend we went to a birthday party
Hmm.
and they were cutting the cake. We were all there and they were cutting the cake, and it was a a knife that they were using to cut the cake with, and that made me very, very anxious because what if I could get out of control somehow and I would just grab that knife and start stabbing people just out of nowhere. So that made me, I got like a sinking feeling in my stomach and just felt, I just wanted to just, I don't even know what to do. I just wanted to disappear. And I kind of like try to get reassurance from my wife I made some conversation with her to see like how if she's perceiving me that I'm acting any different. And oh yeah, and then I was taking pictures at the party, so I took a bunch of pictures. And then when we got home, I checked the pictures to see that nobody was bleeding or stabbed in them.
So let's break it down. So your prompt, what did you track for your prompt?
The way I saw it, it was when they started cutting the cake at the party, and
Okay.
they're cutting it with a knife.
Okay, so seeing a cake get cut, and then what was your doubt? What was your what if in that moment?
Well, I had to think about it. So the action, I guess the consequences would have been that I could start stabbing people, but then the doubt would be that like I lose control because that's how I could start stabbing people. It's just I just lose control of myself and I just start stabbing people.
Okay, so your doubt was, what if I'm out of control? What if I've lost
Yeah,
control?
yeah. Like
Oh.
what if I lose control right now and I just grab that knife and start stabbing people?
Mm-hmm. Good. All right. And then what was your discomfort? You mentioned like you had a lot of anxiety. What
Yeah.
was going on for you? What was your
I felt
feeling?
really awful. I got like a sinking feeling in my stomach. I just kind of like panicked because I felt like it was like so plausible.
Mhm.
So yeah, I just got like this kind of panicky, anxious feeling, like a sinking feeling in my stomach, and I just felt, I just felt totally different in a bad way.
Oof. Yeah. Yes, you felt bad. Okay. And then your compulsion, you said that you were checking something to make sure no one was like stabbed or bloody.
Yeah, I was taking pictures,
Okay.
and when I got home, I started taking more pictures after I got this feeling. And when I got home, I went through them a bunch of times, and I magnified, to see everybody like in the pictures to make sure that nobody was bleeding or stabbed.
Okay. All right. So there's your sequence. Good job on practicing, applying what we learned from module 1. How was it for you to have like that difference, because you before you didn't know about the sequence, right? Like before we started treatment. And so a lot of times with OCD, like we know that we feel really scared in that
Yeah,
moment. How was it for you to now see it as a sequence?
it still sucked, and it's still very unpleasant and tormenting. But I was still, I had that sequence in my head, so I was able to have a framework. So I try to break it down and to see the different parts of it and put it together to see how it unfolds.
Mhm.
So I had something to go on to where I could, make it into something like a framework for how I get to where I am, where I'm feeling so bad about something.
Yeah, you were able to see, oh, here's the prompt, here's my doubt, here's the scary thing, here's the consequences, this is how I'm feeling. Were you able to do that reflection activity where you pause and you say, what would remain of my sequence if the doubt were false?
I did that a little bit afterwards, when after we got back from the party, and I thought about it a little bit. So yeah, it was like, what if the dollar falls? Well, then I probably, the party would just go on, and I would just not be scared of these things, of losing control and stabbing people. And then I could just have a normal time at the party with my wife, and I wouldn't devote so much energy to like trying to figure this out and taking pictures. And then I got like secondary doubts about what if I was acting weird at the party taking so many pictures, and then like people thought I was weird. And so it seems like it just compounds itself.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, excellent job tracking your sequence. And today, diving into module 2, well, we can use this. Is it okay if we use this for our work today?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Well, let's dive in. So we've got a sequence to work with, and let's dive into module 2. Okay. Can you see my screen sharing client worksheet 2?
Yeah.
All right, great. Today we're going to talk about the logic behind OCD. And if you've listened to podcasts or read blogs about OCD, which we talked a little bit about that in the free consult, that you've done a lot of information learning on OCD, you've done a lot of reading on it, you've done a lot of listening to different podcasts and stuff. You may have come across a lot of people saying there's no logic to OCD,
Mm,
right? If you try to figure it out, the hole gets deeper and deeper. Okay, that
right. Yeah.
you hear that a lot. In I-CBT, we're saying, well, actually, there is logic, and we all use logic, and we all use reasoning to understand our day to day.
You're right. Yep.
Okay, and we're not saying that the logic is like appropriately used in a context, because there's something that is like out of context about OCD, but we're not going to talk about that a whole lot today. What we're going to do today is we're going to learn that there is actually reasoning in these obsessional doubts. Okay, and I'm going to skip through some of these paragraphs because you'll have them to read outside of session. So we're just going to summarize and we're going to move through. Okay.
Okay.
So we've narrowed down some pretty common reasoning categories we see in OCD. Can you see this here where there's 1 through 5?
Yeah.
Okay. These are pretty common reasoning categories in OCD. It's not everything though. It's, as you can see here, the last category is it's possible, and that's pretty broad.
Hmm.
But we do see quite a bit of abstract facts, reasoning, general rules, which are like the shoulds that our reasoning process is like, oh, we should do it this way. This is a rule. Hearsay is like the stories we've heard, personal experience, pretty self-explanatory. Like these might be reason, like when someone says, "Oh, I don't like going to this store." They're going to
Hmm.
have reasons for that, and they might actually have personal experiences for why they don't like to go to that store. These are pretty common reasoning categories we see in OCD, and I'm going to show you an example here. All right, 1 through 5 here. Can you see that okay?
Yes.
All right. Go ahead and read through those, and then we're going to chat about this. Let me know once you get through all 5.
Okay. Okay.
Okay. This is someone who has contamination concerns.
Hmm.
So someone else's doubt is informed by these reasons. If I was to ask this person and say, "Oh, no, don't worry about it. You're not going to get it's not going to be contaminated. No problem." Their reasoning process is actually like, mm-mm, germs exist.
Hmm.
Their reasoning process is like, no, no, no. Surgeons are supposed to wash their hands. Obviously, I should be worried too. Okay. Their reasoning process is going to say, I heard someone getting sick. Obviously, OCD has a point because it's using these reasoning categories. So this is what we're looking at today is we're saying these doubts don't come out of nowhere. They're not like these random thoughts that everyone has. I-CBT is saying that your obsessional doubt actually is arrived at because of these reasoning categories. Have you ever heard of the word intrusive thought?
Yeah, I think that was in some of the like podcasts and other stuff that I've done about OCD.
Okay. Intrusive thoughts are thought to be like the start of OCD in some models. That
Hmm.
it's like an appraisal of this thought that everyone has. So the idea behind that is like everyone has these random thoughts. They become intrusive when we do the appraisal, which is like the consequences. Okay. But what I-CBT is saying is that your intrusive thoughts are actually like, we're saying, well, that's not the problem. We're saying we're going to go upstream to that doubt, and that doubt is arrived at because of these reasons. So your intrusive thoughts are actually, like I-CBT saying, those are actually inferences of doubt, which are like reasoning conclusions.
Okay. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. This is a little bit different than saying OCD is just random thoughts that we appraise a certain way. We're saying, oh no, you've got reasoning happening, and this could actually kind of explain a little bit. We're not completely sure, but the idea is like this could explain why you have a specific theme that's different than someone else's theme. Okay.
That makes sense.
Your OCD is different than someone else's because of a few things that are part of that inferential confusion that we'll learn about as we go, but one of them is the reasoning process that you have. Okay. I want to go ahead and point out a little bit here where abstract facts, these are just kind of like, germs exist. Okay, it's just kind of
Right. Right.
abstract, like this floating idea. Okay, the rules are the shoulds. Hearsay is like
Mm.
this, the stories we've heard. Experience is your personal experience. And OCD loves this one, the good old it's possible.
Hmm. Yep. Yep.
Okay. What I'd like to do, if you're willing to, is let's plug in your reasons. And like we're gonna let your reasoning process speak its mind. We're gonna let OCD speak its mind. Would you be okay to do that?
Yeah. Yeah. I would.
Okay, let's do it. We've got your sequence, so we
Hmm.
can go off of this one. What if I'm out of control?
Okay.
Okay, what if I'm losing control? If I was to say, David, don't worry about it. You're not losing control. What's OCD going to have to say?
Ooh, okay. So I can look at these different categories, and yeah, I can see it in my own in how I like think about this. So people lose control. It,
Mm-hmm.
it's actually a thing that happens. It's we know about it. It's something that actually happens in life. People lose control. So I think that would be like the abstract.
Yeah. What about rules or shoulds? Do you have any of those? And it's okay. Like your obsessional doubt might not have all of these reasoning categories. It's okay if it doesn't. But we're letting OCD speak its mind. So maybe all of your reasons will just be abstract, or maybe all of them will just be the good old it's possible. But if there's any of these other ones, like let's make room for them today. We want to hear about them.
Okay. For like the rules, there's rules about there's laws, right? There's laws like if you like there's laws against violence against hurting others because we're not supposed to harm others. We're
Hmm.
supposed to protect others, protect our families, and not harm people.
Very good. So when I'm like, oh, David, don't worry about it. You're not going to lose control. You're like, yeah, but people should make sure their family is safe. People
Yeah.
should keep other people safe.
Yeah, I mean, we have these rules for a reason. We have the justice system for a reason, because
Hmm.
people should do these things.
And then do you have any hearsay? Like, what about if I was like, no, don't worry. You're not going to lose control. Does your reasoning process have any like really good, juicy stories that make it seem really credible?
Yeah, a few years ago when I was like 21, I was talking to my cousin and he told me how like once he couldn't remember what happened for 3 days. So like
Mm.
he had no control. He had no memories of what happened for 3 days straight. Yeah, you know. Um,
Yep. And see, we're saying, wow, your reasoning process is using that as a strong citation for this doubt. It's given
mhm.
this doubt an extra punch to say, oh yeah, no, this is possible.
Yep.
What about personal experience or any other hearsay, any other stories that come up when I'm like, oh no, David, don't worry about this. You're not going to lose control.
Like you read articles or you hear news stories about people who just lose control. But the one with my cousin was like really poignant for me.
It's like the one that sticks around.
Yeah, yeah.
Hmm. Yeah. And then
'Cause he's
personal
like a good
experience.
guy, like he's not the kind of person who would do something, but you know, like totally had no control.
Oh, good. Ooh, yeah, you're noticing like in your reasoning process, it's like these things can happen to people who day to day aren't bad people, but they
Yeah,
can still lose control.
yep.
Okay.
He's not the kind of guy who'd be like, well, we don't trust that guy. Don't let him around like dangerous things. Not
Hmm.
at all.
Yeah. What other reasons? If I was like, let OCD, let that reasoning process come through.
Yeah, so experience, I had a few years ago, I got really angry. I was having an argument with my wife. I got really angry, and I literally felt like I didn't have control. Like I could do anything, and I just felt like overpowered. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and then like another one was when we went on vacation, we got on a plane and I fell asleep on the plane, and next thing I knew the plane had landed. So it's not I fell asleep, but it's like I just like, the whole trip I wasn't I had no agency. That whole trip I was just like out.
Mm-hmm.
So it was just like, you know, again, wasn't in control for I don't know
Mm-hmm.
how long that plane ride, like a few hours.
Yeah. Ooh, and traveling is such a good example of where we're out of a routine and we can like really feel even more vulnerable when we're traveling. And so it's
Right.
like, you mix that up. It's you were really like, you were saying you're like, I know I slept, but
Mm-hmm.
what if?
Yep.
And
Yep.
and OCD uses this to convince you today that this could be going on today. I could be out of
Mm-hmm.
control right now. So this is a strong citation. Okay. What about anything else? Like any other possibility reasonings?
Yeah. Thinking about my cousin's story, anything's possible, right? But thinking about my cousin's story, like he's my cousin. We're related. We share genes. So
Mhm.
if something like that could happen to him, where like he just totally like blanks out and doesn't remember, like it could happen to me too.
Mhm. Yeah. So in your reasoning process, it's well, it's possible because my cousin doesn't remember a few days, and I could also be in this stage right now where I'm not remembering this. I could already be out of control,
Yep.
and it's possible because we're also related.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a genetic factor there.
Yep.
Good. What do you think about this where we're showing you we're showing you how OCD is like almost like one of the good tricks. It packs a punch. And when you're having that obsessional doubt, it's like all of this is going on in your reasoning process that's making it really hard not to believe this doubt.
Yeah, it's very convincing and it's very
Hmm.
persuasive, and I'm just like, yeah, I just find myself thinking, I could just, I could wake up and have no memory of having stabbed a bunch of people.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. Okay, so we're showing we're showing the tricks of OCD, and let's go down here. I want to show you, and again, you'll have this so you can read through you can read through this more thoroughly. We're covering it generally in session, but I want to show you this other example. Okay, this is someone else with OCD
Hmm.
whose reasoning process uses the same different common categories, but this is for someone has concerns about waves of contamination from metal objects. Go ahead and read through this and we'll talk about
Okay.
it.
Okay.
Okay. What did you think of seeing that? It doesn't like right now it doesn't seem like you're having obsessional doubts like relating to contaminants
Mhm.
from metal. So what was it like for you to see someone else's reasoning for their obsessional doubt compared to like yours for what your obsessional doubts?
Honestly, it was preposterous. It was like ridiculous. It seemed like it was like it didn't like make, I guess I could see it, but it wasn't convincing for me.
Hmm. Yeah. Yours are convincing. Would you say that yours are convincing for you?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. What's the difference here? What's the difference between yours and this one?
I don't know what it is, maybe because it's just something totally different. It's not about sharp things. It's about the waves from metal objects. And to me, that's just I have no issues with that. So just the whole thing seems like it's all speculative and just preposterous.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, you were saying that last week too, where it was like yours feel more real.
Oh yeah.
Yep. And you've probably heard this in the podcast where it's not uncommon for us with OCD where we're like, man, I wish I had that other theme because that theme wouldn't bother me at all.
I know. Yeah, it's like I wouldn't care about like metal objects. I wouldn't care if I walked by like a
Hmm.
metal tower or something. I'm
Right.
good.
Yeah. I wish I had that theme. Yeah. Yeah. Pretty common. And as you know, you can change its shirt too. Like we're going to learn about this in the treatment where that inferential confusion that you and I talked about in the free consult, like we did the little iceberg. One part of that iceberg is the vulnerable self. So we're going to get more into that as we go through treatment, but again, we think that this kind of ties into like why people have different themes, quote unquote themes. And as you can see here, your reasoning process is very different than someone else's, but OCD uses the same tactics no matter the theme.
Hmm.
Right? What is different is your lived experience, your vulnerable self, your reasoning, like the content of your reasoning, but you still use the same reasoning process.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're ICBT is really looking at the process here, and so no matter what the content is, it follows the same trick, uses
That
the
makes
same trick.
sense. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, breaking it down into these different reasons, it's
Hmm.
very, you can definitely see, just like last time, now I can see the structure and like how the reasoning process goes and
Yeah.
the different justifications that come up for to reinforce this doubt.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Reinforcement. Right. These are like the big reinforcers. One way that can help us understand like the reasoning and the logic is, have you ever done? I'm going to come back so I can see you for a second. Let me stop sharing this. All right. So, have you ever done like a research paper or a report, and then your professor says you need to go get peer reviewed, high quality citations?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Do you remember from the iceberg in the free consult, the inferential confusion iceberg? One part of that, like we were talking about, there's a vulnerable self. Another part is the narrative.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we're
Yep.
going to learn about that next session. But there's a story here. We saw the other David story last week, right? He's got a story.
Yeah.
Um, Everyone with OCD has a story, and this here, the logic is the citation. It's the peer reviewed, like really.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's those high quality references.
Yes. Yeah,
Yep.
footnotes, references, citations. Okay, this is the reasoning process. Tell me a little bit about like why would a teacher or professor or anyone who's looking for credible sources, why would they want you to find that? What's the point of having strong resources?
Well, because that those are they bolster the thesis of the research paper, and they
Mhm.
lend it credibility and persuasiveness and prestige.
Mhm. And your doubts, right? Your doubts also get that with your reasoning process.
Yes, yes.
Okay? So yeah, they're the citations. That's an easy way to think about it is like your own reasoning process brings in the big guns with this logic.
Yep. Yes, it does.
Yeah. I'm wondering if maybe now we can do, let's see, I'm going to share my screen again. Right. And we're going to pull up. Okay. Can you see this screen here where I'm moving it and it says example?
Yes.
Okay. We're going to scroll down here and we're going to here it is. We're going to put ourselves in the mind of another person with OCD, kind of like we did last week where we use other examples. And the reason being is like sometimes we can understand OCD from our personal experience, but also it gives us some context if we look at it at someone else's experience as well. Okay, here are two examples. The first one, I might suddenly lose control and hit someone else.
Okay.
The other one is there might be broken glass in the meal I prepared for my children.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we're not going to do the first one. That one's very similar to yours. So let's go with the
Yeah.
one. Okay, I'm going to scroll up so you can see the examples again, but let's keep in mind this is a parent who has doubts. What if there's broken glass in the meal I'm making for my kids?
Okay.
Okay, so their doubt is, what if there's glass in here? Now let's look at what would be their abstract fact, maybe.
Their abstract facts would be, glass shatters easily.
Mhm.
There's a lot of glass in the house, things like that. They just, kids trust me, and they're not going to check.
Yeah. What about some rules? This is a parent who has doubts about, what if there's glass here and, they keep checking. So, what could be a should that that parent is dealing with in their reasoning?
Parents are supposed to be conscientious about safety for their kids. They're supposed to protect their kids. That's like the main thing of being a parent. So protect their children, make sure that they're taken care of, make sure that they're not in danger, make sure that they have, food to eat without danger involved.
Hmm. Yeah. What about hearsay? Any, what could be some like hearsay reasoning that that person is dealing with or having?
You hear about stuff happening all the time where parents are negligent. They take their eyes off their children, or they don't pay attention when they're doing something for their children. Bad things happen, like the children get hurt somehow. They eat something that's harmful, or they fall, or things like that.
Hmm. And then what about personal experience? What could that parent have had, like maybe some experience with in the past that could make this like really believable?
Maybe it's something like they had some experience with, they remember like shattered glass somewhere like on the ground or something, or maybe they, from other parents, they heard stories about how the parents wasn't other parents weren't careful or something like that.
Hmm. Any possibilities? What's another one where they might be like, well, if I was to tell that person, oh no, don't worry about it, there's no glass in there.
Maybe they'll remember something. It's possible they did something else careless the other day but it wasn't such bad consequences, but they did something, or yeah, or they could, there's always a chance that they'll gonna let their guard down or something.
Yeah, it's possible. So I can't remember. I feel like there's all these news stories from, years ago where we would watch TV and they'd have, I don't know if it was like the real stories of the ER or something. And like people would
Hmm.
like show up to the ER and they'd have
Right, yeah, they have all kinds of crazy
like
stuff,
they
all kinds of,
swallowed something,
right,
like,
yes, they just different things lodged in their guts or something, and
yes.
like all kinds of weird stuff that the people go to the
Hmm.
ER for.
Yeah. And in today's world, in social media, we have access to all these stories all the time. And so it's, the hearsay can be really for a lot of people in their obsessional doubts, right?
Yeah, they could just do a YouTube dive of all kinds of different
Yeah.
videos of stuff.
Yeah. Okay, so you now know how to check out the logic of other OCD doubts and then your own. And so let's scroll down here. Let's do a little reflection. Compare the reasons you came up with for yours and the one for the glass. Are they
Hmm.
different? Are they similar?
I mean, for me, they're different because the ones for my own of losing control, it's visceral to me. It feels
Hmm.
real, it feels threatening, and it feels plausible and compelling. For the other one with the glass, I can see the pure logic in it, but it doesn't really, grab a hold of me and make me anxious.
Hmm. Yeah. Okay. Now we're at the end. Learning points. Obsessional doubts, they don't come out of the blue. Okay. We were talking about that. These aren't random. ICBT does not see these as like random thoughts. It sees it as these doubts come from a reasoning process. Okay. There's logic behind your doubts.
Yep, prior reasoning. That makes sense.
Hmm. Yeah. So at least 4 times a day, you can try to identify the doubt that motivated you to carry out your compulsions. And then this is kind of like what you did in the first week. And then you're going to notice like what are the citations that your DAO is using now. These are the citations, the references, the footnotes.
That'll be interesting. But yeah, I'll try to just look at it, take a step back and look at it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah. What did you think of today's session?
It was good. It built on the previous one. So now there's that kind of that sequence, but now I was able to look at this one, like this reasoning process there from one to the other. So yeah, it was very informative and very eye-opening.
Hmm. Yeah. And then this week, you don't have to keep tracking the sequence like on paper, but maybe you can just notice like if you still have if you have an obsessional doubt, notice the sequence. A lot of times we call this like if we have a trigger, but really I see the trigger is like more downstream. So when you have that feeling, that trigger, look at what's the upstream doubt and then notice what logic your brain used to try to make it feel more powerful.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Anything we could have done differently in this session to make it better, do you think? We shared the screen, so that was a little different.
Yeah, that was good. It was nice to see the worksheets on the screen.
Hmm. Yeah. Do you prefer that or the paper?
The screen works fine. That's
Yep.
good.
Okay. Next week, we will dive into the story. We're moving our way, we're moving right through the treatment as we were talking about in the free consult that, we've got the iceberg. This is what we're coming at different parts of the iceberg now. Right now,
Yeah.
we're hitting on the reasoning. Next week, we're going to hit on that narrative. And then the week after that, we're going to focus on hitting the vulnerable self. And we just keep doing more of this.
I want to like skip ahead and get to these because it's making sense.
Yeah,
I want
it's
to see what's
connecting.
next.
Yeah, we'll plan to hit the story next week.
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay, good job today, David.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.